We'll call this meeting to order at 11:01. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Trustee Polly.
Here.
Trustee Lappin.
Here.
Clerk Palovich here. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Here.
Trustee Kroll.
Here.
Trustee Reiner.
Here.
Supervisor Skibby.
Here. Are there any corrections, additions, subtractions to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, is there a motion on the table to adopt the agenda as presented?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Support.
We have motion and support. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose the same. Agenda has been adopted. This is the first opportunity for public comment. If there is any public comment, please stand to the podium and
turned
state your
on?
name. I did not turn it on. State your, if you could just press a button just to turn on the mic. State your name for the record. Again, by online presence, this is the first opportunity for public comment. If there is any public comment, please state your name for the record. Okay, moving forward to the payment of the bills. I believe that's been circulated. Is there a motion to make payment of the bills?
I'll move.
We have a motion on the table to make payment of bills. Is there support? I'll support it. Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll. Oh, never mind. Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Present.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward to the minutes of March 22nd, 2021, which was a budget hearing, and March 22nd, that was our regular meeting. We'll entertain a motion to move forward with adopting both sets of minutes.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion on the, it's been moved and supported to adopt the minutes of both meetings on March 22nd. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Moving forward into correspondence, we have two items from Alpena County Road Commission, their county road report, and also their minutes of their March 2nd meeting. I'll entertain a motion to move forward with receiving and filing.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table to receive and file the correspondence. Is there support? Support. It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of receiving and file signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose the same. Okay, moving to our first item of business is a presentation. Mr. Mahler, the podium is yours, sir.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm Mike Mahler. I'm the Economic Development Director at Target Alpena, and appreciate the opportunity to kind of give you guys and ladies an update on what's happening in our community. By way of background, for those of you who don't know me, I have a finance and a kind of an accounting background. I spent 35 years working in a financial capacity. Most of my adult life, frankly. I did retire as the CEO of First Federal of Northern Michigan after our merger. I was there for 17 years. Presently, I serve on several boards, including the Alpena Downtown Development Authority Board, the Brownfield Authority Board, the Board of Education, the First Federal Northern Michigan Legacy Foundation Board, and I'm also part of the Michigan Unmanned Aerial Systems Consortium Board. Before I talk about economic development and activity in our area, I want to at least give a quick update of what kind of a Target does and some of who our partners are. For those of you who aren't totally familiar, I mean, I had a lot of interaction with my predecessor, Jim Clarich, when he sat in this role and as the CEO of the bank, and I wasn't always sure what Target did or how they did it. So just for my own purposes, I think it makes sense just to educate people. So first of all, Target is the economic development arm of the chamber. It's part of the Chamber of Commerce, although we have our own separate, we're a 501c3. We have our own separate board of directors apart from the chamber board. It was formed in 1989. The mission statement of Target is to provide provide for the economic well-being and enhance quality of life for all the residents of Northeast Michigan. So Target is funded through several mechanisms, primarily chamber memberships. And also we get direct support from the city of Alpena, of course, Charter Township of Alpena. We have a contract relationship with Presque Isle County. I met with their finance committee this morning before coming here. And then of course, we also get supported through the county of Alpena. Target has the ability to make loans through two different loan funds that we operate. Both were federally seeded with federal money, one from the USDA and one from the Economic Development Administration, otherwise known as the EDA. So that fund is called our RLF fund, and we can make loans up to $50,000 out of that fund. And that fund serves Alpena County exclusively. The second fund that was funded through the USDA serves 6 counties: Alpena, Presque Isle, Otsego, Sheboygan, Montmorency, and Alcona. Maximum loan amount from that fund is $30,000. We can do smaller loans. Target can directly without the involvement of a bank, but what we need is for an applicant to have a turn down letter from a financial institution. Our mission is not to replace the banks in our community. Our mission is to support them. So if someone comes to us with a small request because frankly, a bank wasn't willing to do it, then we could take a look at it ourselves. But again, under $20,000. Contrary to what people think, Target does not have a pot of money that we can just give it away to help businesses get started. I get calls weekly about, I understand that you guys have some money and you can help me start a business. And that's not the case. Where there are funds available, we may know about them and can maybe bring the sources and the users together, but we do not sit on a pot of money that we could just disperse the community to help entrepreneurs get started as much as we might like to. So Target works with several partners in the name of economic development. These include NEMCOG, which is the Northeast Michigan Council of Governments, Northern Lakes Economic Alliance, NLEA, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, of course, is a large partner of ours, the SBDC, which is a Small Business Development Center, and the Michigan Department of Agricultural and Rural Development. Those are folks, those 5 are folks that I routinely converse with, if not daily, weekly for certain. So that's kind of what we are and who we work with on a high level. So now I'll kind of get into what we do and what we have been doing. So with the onset of the pandemic, everything kind of really shifted for us. It was less about economic development and more about the avoidance of economic redevelopment. So the focus really became trying to keep the businesses we got here and keep them afloat. So we did a couple things. We established a pandemic loan program from those pools I just mentioned, to kind of give opportunities to businesses who might need money to restart after the shutdown, come forward and say, I got inventory I need to re-procure in order to restock my refrigerators if I'm a restaurant or whatever the case may be. And then we also allowed for forbearances for existing loan customers. So the last thing we were going to do is put one of our loan customers in debtor prison by holding them to the loan requirements or note requirements. So we basically, for borrowers in good standing, we relaxed the terms and gave them time to preserve cash. Also, in addition, in the name of supporting local businesses, we were asked as a professional economic development organization to handle 3 programs from the MEDC grant programs. They approached, there's 83 counties in Michigan. They approached 15 organizations like Target and said, we need you to be responsible for handling these programs across all 83 counties. And so they asked us if we would take on the role of supporting the following counties: Alpena, Alcona, Presque Isle, Iosco, and Sheboygan. And so with the first program, they came to us and said, these are the 5 counties. We're going to give you money. You need to get it out to small businesses quickly and efficiently and equitably. And so we formed up a committee from all 5 counties with equal representation, 2 people per county, and agreed on criteria, and then put forth the process so that applicants could seek funding. And so when the dust settled, there's been 3 programs that we've handled. To give you some statistics here, we had, and I'll step back for one moment. Target was never involved in the decision-making as to who got grants and who did not. That wasn't our role. That was really handled by the committee. And that's why our committee members remained anonymous, just because those are hard choices. To give you an idea here, we had 1,073 grant requests, and we approved, and 707 of them were approved. They're 66%. The max grants were $20,000. The average grant was about $7,600. We had several recipients apply for grants through all 3 MEDC programs and were awarded grants in all 3 MEDC programs. We also recommended 4 loans to local businesses that the MEDC had set up, favorable terms for 4 where we thought to be very key vital businesses across the 5-county area. And I guess lastly, the last thing I'll mention with respect to these MEDC programs is there's potentially another one in the works. There's CARES Act money from last summer that has not been deployed yet fully. The Michigan legislature is still sitting on a lot of money outside of the most recent COVID relief program, but the state is still sitting on funds to deploy through the CARES Act. And so they've indicated to organizations like ours that there's probably going to be another program in the works that they're going to need our help and support with. And so we should be prepared. And so, of course, when we catch wind of that, we'll make certain to do our part to get the word out so businesses could be fully informed. So now on to kind of the things that are going on within the current development activity in our area. So keep in mind, not every project that's going on in these zip codes comes through our office. Not everybody seeks our help or counsel in these kinds of things. For some various reasons, some might want to just keep it to themselves. They don't want competition to know what they're doing or the timing of doing it. So, but for the most part, I think a lot of projects do flow through our office, but not all. And so, so I'm going to break it down into projects that are underway or for certain or soon about to begin, projects that look very hopeful with details that are maybe being ironed out. And then lastly, projects that are on the radar that have a long ways to go before they become reality, but things that are being discussed. So those are 3 categories. So as far as projects that are underway or about to become underway, the first project is at 600 Walnut Avenue, which was the former Catholic Central. This project is a new DHHS facility. Some of you saw it in the newspaper yesterday on the front page that they found a cornerstone had a time capsule in there. So Bruce Dietz is developing that for John Keller and his organization to move into. And then that's going to be a 15,800 square foot facility. It's going to be nice. It's going to be beautiful. And while this one's not adding it's only adding 2 new jobs, but the fact is it is construction on the north side of town, which we just generally don't see a lot of. So while this isn't a new agency coming to our community, it is a relocation of an existing one in a new facility. And so we're glad for that. Right alongside of that, the Boys and Girls Club are going to be improving the building rate similar on almost alongside of it, actually. And so we know that project is well along the way. I know that some of you have probably already seen requests for support for the Boys and Girls Club. And so we're glad to see the north side of town getting some love here. Outside of the college, we just generally don't see a lot of investment, a lot of capital investment in that part of town. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'm signing documents to sell 2 lots on Commerce Drive. Target owns some properties, including the lots on Commerce. And so tomorrow we're selling 2 of them. And this is exciting. It's a brand new enterprise coming to our community. And I don't have the specs on the number of jobs it will create, but I do know that the people that have been hired to run this new enterprise are people from downstate with young families. So I know we got 2 young families moving to Alpena, assuming they could find a place to live or a house. If you read the paper last few days, we have 2 young families coming to our community to run this new business. And so I'll leave the buyer to talk about the business on his terms, but at least we're selling 2 lots on Commerce tomorrow. So that I'm excited about. Of course, we have the Ace Hardware going up US 23 North. As a matter of fact, it's just interesting. As I was driving in yesterday, they had their construction crane there setting steel for probably the roof. And then if you look further and look slightly to over your left, you see the big construction crane in front of the cancer center. And then the smaller one alongside of it. I'm thinking, when have we seen construction cranes in Alpena, let alone 3 of them? So anyway, so that excites me in this role, that's for sure. South of town, we've got the repurposing of Thompson Sales and Service. That building's been sitting idle for a long time, and a company called F&T is moving into that space and going to create a retail location there. And so it's good that we're taking, again, another part of the town that doesn't get a lot of attention and seeing some investment in there. And then also on the south end of town there, the former First Federal used to own what was the Dunkin' Donuts that was very, very blighted here in recent years. We sold that, and the person who bought it, as many of you may have seen, has put some money into the exterior of it. And I reached out to him to figure out what his plans are to open up that new restaurant there. And he said he's just waiting to get the parking lot paved, but he appears ready to go again. So another improvement to the general appearance of the south end or south corridor of our community. Also, we're going to have a new fish and wildlife office here. Right now, they have a lease space over off of Fletcher Street, and evidently that space is not adequate for them and for their needs. And so the GSA has approved the construction of a new facility for them, and they want indoor storage on top of office space there. And so I know that there are 4 bidders for this government lease working on it in our community right now. I'm working with 2 of them directly. 2 of them have not chosen to reach out to us. So I don't know a whole lot about what they got going on, but the 2 that I'm working with, it has to be built within the city. And so I've got one developer who's got lots on Commerce for if they're chosen, the facility would be built on Commerce Drive, right near the 2 lots that I'm selling tomorrow. And the other developer is working with the property the city owns north of town. So they've got that 95 acres that they put the road to nowhere in over the wetlands. So anyway, we've got another developer looking at 3 acres there for this facility. And we've got renderings. It's gonna be 22,000 square feet. It'll look nice. And so glad that, again, while it's not necessarily new jobs, I don't know this, no one's told me this, but my hope is that they're maybe going to put more staff in that building too. Hence the need for a little larger space. And of course, again, there will be some indoor storage. So we're going to have obviously some more equipment here. So again, I'd love to see some development on the city property north of town or Commerce Drive. We'll take it. It looks like it's coming next year. The former Knights of Columbus Hall off of Hamilton Drive, which I'm sure some of you probably attended weddings there and other parties. That was sold, and now it's been resold again. And the people who bought it are turning it into a daycare center. And I'm excited. I've met with them on more than one occasion. They've already bought it, and they're already turning it, building classrooms inside there, and they hope to be open this spring, very shortly. A lot of challenges for them. Just when you're building a daycare center, the costs are crazy. And so they've learned a few lessons along the way. But we need quality daycare. It's one thing I keep hearing in this community is that there's just not access to enough daycare. And so and I know that in meeting with the people that bought it, they're going to do this the right way. This isn't going to be somewhere where your child is going to be sat in a corner and watch. You're going to be educating your children at a young age. So anyway, I'm glad to see we've got that, particularly if we're going to attract young families to our community. And then also I kept on this list, we retained Glicks, when the mall ownership changed, Glicks was at a crossroads. We stay till we go. I'm glad that we were able to keep them, move them downtown. I think that the location they're going into will be good and benefit them. So I'm calling that a win that we're able to hold on to those folks. Red Brick Tap and Barrel just received a grant from the MEDC for $25,000, a match on main grant. They were awarded it here a couple of weeks ago. They're going to be building an outdoor space in the alley adjacent to their building with a bar and seating for 43 people and some cool lights above. And so anyway, glad it makes our downtown, I think, a more attractive potential location. So I'm glad about that. And then, of course, we know the Antique Mall, the Royal Night Cinema, State Theater are all under renovation. We've got somebody who stepped up and is looking to do the community a big favor by taking those properties and putting some money into them. So I don't know what the timing is for that, but again, I'm excited to see the improvement potentially to our downtown. And then just the last thing under this section, Presque Electric and Gas did receive an $11 million federal grant to run fiber to the homes that they serve in their network, which is a lot. Like I said, 30,000. They'll be done over a 4-year period. And I know that doesn't necessarily affect Alpena Township so much, but clearly it affects the area just north of here. And I think that area is going to become a lot more attractive. And I think if it becomes more attractive, we all benefit here. So so that's under the things that are happening, I think, for certain. Now, things that are looking hopeful. I know you've all heard ad nauseum the Aldi scenario, Aldi story. It's my understanding, it was not reported in the news today, at least in the Alpena news, but I understand that yesterday the school board did approve the proposal from the developer on what the new bus garage could look like and will look like. So I understand that was approved yesterday. So that project is moving forward. The developer tells me he's committed to this. And then also the same developer is also working on the Marshalls here in our community. Now, getting back to the Aldi's, the one thing that's really neat about the Aldi's is what's not being talked about so much is that site is big enough for not just an Aldi's. He's building it off to the side to allow for the development of something else alongside of it. He's thinking maybe a restaurant. It'd be wonderful. So anyway, his first thought is let's get the Aldi's in, let's get people showing up there, and then the space will become that much more attractive potentially to develop potentially maybe a franchise restaurant in. So remains to be seen. But then also, as I mentioned, he's working with Marshalls. He reached out to me. There was a parking issue there. Our Marshalls needs 110 spots on the site that they chose. The best he could have gotten was 90 approximately, and actually 84, I think. And so with great help and collaboration from Nathan, from Don Gilmet, from city folks, trying to figure out how we could get more parking out of that spot, which really had to do with moving water and retaining water. And so again, to the credit of those parties I just mentioned, they were able to come up with a plan that was a lot simpler, which did not require them to acquire property from a neighbor or acquire property from Meyer, which was just a complicated thing. So thankfully, everybody's willingness to try to find solutions help bring this project much closer to reality. So remains to be seen, but he tells me he's still confident he's going to get it done. And then projects on the radar now. So there is still developer interest in a second downtown hotel. The issue there is you got to have a site, and there's not a lot of property for that. The site of choice that they've got, I concur would be a great one, but it's going to take some work. And so I'm in the middle of that right now. And I'm, again, the person who wants to put this hotel in there is somebody who operates hotels in many places in the Midwest. And he's got many locations where he's got 2 hotels in a downtown. So having 2 hotels in a downtown our size is not out of the realm of possibility. So anyway, we'll see what happens there. I had somebody from Plant Moran Commercial Real Estate reach out to me last week looking for they have a client that they're working with who's unnamed, who's looking for a distribution center up in Northern Michigan. They were indifferent as to where in Northern Michigan, but it had to be in Northern Michigan. So I turned them on to the county property at the airport, city property north of town. We'll see where it goes. I'm hopeful that those folks will come up here and at least take a look. Certainly in Northern Michigan, this is a pretty cheap place to buy real estate compared to other parts of Northern Michigan. So we'll see, but I'm hopeful we can at least get them up here for a tour. I did have a developer reach out to me, and I know they've reached out to Nathan as well to talk about, they own the property between the Meyer gas station and Culver's. They own that space that's there right now, and they've got 3 businesses they want to put in there. And I think all would be great additions to our community. And so her comment to me, I think was probably similar to Nathan, which is, hey, when we're ready to go, we want to get everybody rounded up in a room one time so we can hit the ground running. So I remain hopeful that that happens. She certainly made it sound like they were committed to doing it. And matter of fact, I kind of snickered because she said we want to be open this year by the end of the year. And I chuckled because I know that the trades are so busy here. I mean, most of them are booked up into next year, but we'll deal with that one at a time. I'm in my outreach and in this role, I'm always talking to contractors and do you have capacity? Do you have capacity? So that when I do have some who tell me, yes, they do, like up toward Rogers City Way, I'm going to put them in contact with these developers who got these projects down here that maybe they can get some of their work handled by them. So anyway, remains to be seen, but I'm very hopeful. That would be a great, again, M32 is getting a lot of love in the last 2 decades for sure. And then a local realtor told me that they had somebody reach out from the west side of the state who's interested in the Alpena Power property that Target now owns, possibly a condo with retail in the lower level kind of project. And so I'd love to talk to them. Just trading phone messages with them right now. So the good news is obviously all these projects are, for the most part, many of them are going to employ local contractors, can put local people to work here on projects. And so obviously it's a big win for our area. And then lastly, just the only thing I'll mention here is that the hospital, and we got the $70 million expansion going on right down the street here. And I can't overstate the importance of that. I think we all know that hospitals, rural hospitals like ours around the country are struggling. Many of them are failing. And the fact that we've got a viable hospital here with a committed owner to put more and more money into it just, again, makes this region a lot more attractive. And it makes projects like these developers are looking into a lot more viable for us, frankly. So I thank Chuck Sherwin every time I see him for that, for whatever he's done to help push along that commitment to this community through that big expansion. And then I guess lastly, I'll just take, I know I've been kind of long-winded here, but I mean, if you don't get the sense that I feel pretty bullish about this area, then I did something wrong here, because I am really excited. I think there's a lot of good things going on. And I've only been in this job for a short period of time, but I've always been pretty involved with the economic activity in the area, being the local banker. And I see more good stuff happening right now than I've seen in a long time. And go figure, in the year of COVID, right? Or the first year kind of as we're coming out of COVID. So anyway, I feel great. And I guess I don't know if I'm supposed to open up for questions or not, but if you have any, I'd be glad to.
By all means, if there's any questions for Mr. Mahler, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not a question, but more a comment. Keep it up.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate your support. You all help makes this happen too, and appreciate Nathan. Every time I call him, he's right back with me instantly. So takes that kind of cooperation among many to make these things happen, and none of us do it in a vacuum. So thank you for all that you guys do as well, and ladies.
Thank you very much, Mr.
All right, all
Mahler.
this stuff out then.
Enjoy the
Thank you so
day.
much. Have a great day, everybody.
See you as well. You can leave it on. That's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward into old business. The Public Safety and Public Health Payroll Reimbursement Program. An update to this is that Michelle and I received an email in terms of the disbursement for that we received and requested quite some time ago,
Last July,
last July.
when we requested it.
And after they changed the parameters of the format of the CARES Act money. As it stands right now, through their audit process, and we have no determination in this, potentially we are looking at a reimbursement to the state at $471.04, but we cannot make a redisbursement to the state until they let us know whether or not we actually owe $471.04. They will let us know maybe by May.
And that is from the Public Safety Fund.
Yeah.
That's not from the general fund. All that money was put in the Public Safety Fund, so the reimbursement would come out of there too.
So moving into old or new business, I apologize. First item of new business is the request from Mr. Clark and the South Bay Group to increase an additional $1,782.80 for signs that they were given the green light to put by MDOT, and none of their funding mechanisms cannot fund it at this time. So I'll entertain a motion or discussion.
I don't want to make a motion.
Michelle.
I just want to, we've already, $3,000 is in our budget. They are wanting this on top of the 3,000 we've already budgeted.
Say that again, please.
We've already budgeted 3,000
Yes.
for the South Bay corridor. They want an additional 1,000, Yeah.
$782, which is the cost of the sign.
right?
Have they received any of their $3,000?
No, they have not.
Where would we take the money from if we were to fund this?
I don't know. We're pretty tight on every department.
And that's part of the conversation is, should it be the township's obligation to make payment for the signs, or with the $30,000 that have already been granted to them from their budget request, should they reallocate the monies out of the $3,000 that have already been committed?
I had some conversation with, suggested that there are other funding mechanisms as well, be them through the community foundation or any other number of funding sources that are available to him. Nonprofit. And so I'm not sure what he did with that information, but there are other ways to get that money.
Well, I've had a conversation with him as well, and they've gone to the county, MDOT, DNR and MCOG, and Huron Pines. the those funding sources weren't available to them, at least not for this year. I compare this to monies that we've allocated for Thunder Bay Island, I believe it is. And this is on the major thoroughway from the south into our community, which is where most people come from, either the south or the west into our community. It's a park that they're developing, fairly primitive at this point, but it's a park that has ability to have kayak access and picnic table is there and so on. We've spent considerable amount of money for the Thunder Bay Island that most people coming into the community, unless they're boaters, will not have access to. So my thought is that, and I'll make the motion that we fund this additionally to the 3,000. I'll see if it gets support, but that we fund this. We find a way to do it because that sign gives people a place to stop and use on their way as they're coming into our community. And I believe it's appropriate to let people know where it's at and that it's an asset that's being developed for our township. And as Mike was talking about, the more people we can, and the more development we can do in this township, the more likely we are to have further development happen. So I think it's a small amount of money well spent for a highway sign that tells people, hey, there's this park here available to you, and it's not very far off US 23. I think it's 1/10 of a mile. So I make the motion that we fund it and see where it goes when we vote on it.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
I don't have a problem with it. It's a fundable. Where are you gonna fund it from?
Well, and at this point in time, we can get into discussion, but we have a motion on the table.
Okay.
Is there support?
About support. Guys vote.
Seeing no support, unless there is support, go into discussion. The original motion will die on the table.
Is discussion open?
Well,
No.
not at this point in
Okay.
time, but we have a motion thus far without support.
Well, to keep the discussion going, I'll support the
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion and we have support, discussion.
My
Well-
thoughts are on it. Steve, you said that you talked to Larry about getting other funding, but we don't know where he's gone with that.
I
Is
just
that-
told you.
Yeah, I gave him some other options.
Other than what Russ has said.
Yeah, I had given him a few other options of monies that, for example, the Meyer Foundation, Walmart Foundation.
Okay, well then this is just my thoughts on it, is that we table it until we find out if they've been successful or not approaching those organizations.
Well, and at this point in time, the motion is stated that.
Right,
we're
I mean, I know we have a
maintaining it,
motion, but
So,
that's where I'm at.
Continue. with
so
further
my
discussion.
only, I know that we've allocated in the budget $3,000. What would that money be for?
His request was for the road improvement, and so a couple points of clarification. It is not 1/10 of a mile, it's actually nearly 2.1 miles from, this is at the very end of Partridge Point, not the proposed part just on South Partridge Point Road. So this is MDNR property that is managed by I believe the Atlanta office, and Cody Stevens is point of contact for those said lands. And it's been a utilized park, although I'd say that the day after Thanksgiving, when I was called by a local resident to go out and pick up trash, of which I did. So I conducted my community service of picking up trash. It's one of those quandaries of how do you utilize a natural area and promote utilization and impede misuse. So the $3,000 that were allocated to South Bay Corridor were for gravel and road improvements to the entryway for Frog Road, And then also for the purchase of mulch to put in single track trails from the parking lot at the end of Partridge Point to Lake Shore access, whether it be into Squaw Bay or to the northeast, which would put you in line with Lake Huron. So those are all, and thus far, they've conducted in subsequent years, have utilized donations for gravel and disbursement of gravel by MDNR. So that was the request, was for $3,000 for road improvement access, of which the road itself goes through, especially with the cyclical Lake Huron levels. It's going through a wetland. Actually, it's going through Lake Huron as of last year. So as waters recede, that road is just, there's nothing you can really do. A landscape fabric can only retain gravel until weight breaks that down. I mean, so the monies that they've requested were for access, ingress and egress on that road, on Frog Road. And then also to purchase mulch.
So it is restricted to that,
That was the request that was written,
Okay.
going through the budget process.
Okay, okay.
I was of the understanding it was closer to US 23 than that. I don't know which way you're going around Partridge Point, but if you're going around from the one way, it's longer, but I thought it was right there near the
Almost
Squaw
at
Bay.
the point.
No, it is at the very end of the road. If you actually take North Partridge Point and keep your car a little bit clean and kill your suspension.
Kill your suspension?
Oh, yeah. If you haven't been down that
Oh,
road.
I have,
It's
I have.
splendid. So it is all the way, as you continue due east to the end of the point, and as the road naturally turns into gravel, immediately after the conversion from hardened surface to gravel, the road is immediately right there with a sign at the entry point thus far.
My understanding is that there has been donations of gravel from one of the contractors, I think, Goodrich, for trying to maintain that road you're talking about. And it does, under current conditions, it has been washing out. I don't know if it will this year. But so, yeah, I understand they're spending money that gets washed into the lake at times for that purpose, to make it accessible for people. I understand that there's no support for this here. I made the motion.
I would just,
I believe we should consider this kind of thing to benefit people that are mainlanders rather than people that go out off of shore.
just in my opinion, I think, the sign should have been put up first. When they asked for the $3,000, put the sign up first, and then, whether they did the gravel or do one or the other, the mulch or the gravel, just to let.
Well,
people know it's-
first they had to have MDOT approved, right? This is the sign for the highway.
I just think when we're doing our budget, they knew when we were doing our budget that, ask for the money. Our budget's tight enough as it is.
Is there any further discussion
No, I call for the vote.
about the request? Roll call, please.
Trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
No.
trustee Lappin,
No,
clerk Palovich, no. Treasurer Ellery Summers,
No,
supervisor Skibby.
No. Moving forward to the next item of new business is a recommendation, an amendment to our current policy and procedure manual. Laura, would you like to?
policy procedure, our committee met and we reviewed 3 policies and made the recommendation of what we discussed. In red, it's stricken out if it was, we want to remove it, and the red underline is what would be added. There's one for the travel and meal reimbursement, employee selection, and payroll problems. Attached, and do you have any questions?
The change in the meal and expense reimbursement, I think, was for one particular person.
No,
No, actually, there's. a
It's
correction,
actually
trustee
2
Reinhardt.
people who did-
After it was highlighted that I was the sole individual.
There was another elected official who did not turn in her time,
Oh,
It's okay.
but she has owned up to it. It wasn't Laura. It was me. After I decided that we needed this policy, I looked at mine and went, oh, I'm just as bad.
Yes. Are there any questions of the committee as to the recommendations brought forward? If not, I'll entertain a motion to move forward with the amendments presented.
I would make that motion.
I'll
We have a
support.
motion on the table and we have support. Any further discussion?
Actually, I think by the rules, if the motion comes from a subcommittee, it's actually, I mean, if the proposal comes from a subcommittee, that's already, the motion's on the table. Yeah.
The recommendation,
Yeah.
but for minute purposes.
So,
We have,
no, I think we've got more work to do on these.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to do that. Some of it depends on, we want some safety things addressed about exiting the building in certain kinds of emergencies. That's being worked on. I will say that I put in a call to the sheriff's department. I haven't yet been able to make that connection, but I do have tour of the jail this week. So I'm expecting to be in the presence of Steve or the undersheriff, and Sheriff Steve or the undersheriff, and that request will be made at that time. Wonderful.
We also have a handbook that was, you know, a draft was created a year ago that the committee will also review and make recommended changes to as well.
yeah, there will be quite a few meetings yet to come for the policy and procedure committee. So we have a motion and support on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Please.
Trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. And moving forward to the next item of new business are the fire department reports. Chief Robbins will be with the Santa Cruz.
The first thing I have for you is the monthly reports completed from the month of March. Or if you guys got that printout for Southside Station, we had a total of 28 medicals, 3 personal injury accidents, a fire, 16 service calls, 1 false alarm, 2 grass fires, a hazmat incident, and a mutual aid. What that brings us up to for the years, a total of 151 calls. If you guys see that average runs per day, which is incorrect because what that's auto summing is against the total year, not the year to date. So it'd be the correct math on that would be 1.68. So that's where we stand at for the Southside Station. To update you on the hiring process, Matt Benedict is been doing ride-alongs with the department and putting time on, as I understand from Michelle's first official day
Will be the 19th.
will be the 19th of April. He's doing very well. Also is Luke Meisner, our other hire. I'm very encouraged by both of their performance. Also is just to remind you at the last meeting, it was approved to repost the positions on Indeed. From that reposting, received approximately 14 applications. I weeded those down to minimally qualified people. Came out to about 8, and then the top 5 are slated. Hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have virtual interviews established or set up. I'll be passing that information along to Haley and Michelle so that we can set up the virtual interviews and then continue the process from there. So I I also, as far as hopefully good news, we're receiving updates from the Smeel factory on our truck. Haley can, just to let you guys see where the truck is at, it's actually a little bit ahead of schedule. These are just a series of some random photos on the floor, but with the advent of CAD CAM, the reason we're a little bit ahead of schedule on that is computer aided design, computer aided manufacture. They used to, at this particular factory, used to have to wait for the chassis to appear before they could start work on the box and pump work. With the CAD CAM system now, they can simultaneously, as the chassis was being built in Charlotte, they were plotting out the box and the pump out in Nebraska at the Smeel factory. So it's come along just a wee bit quicker than we anticipated. I believe the original delivery date was slated for late September, early October. We're now looking at somewhere in July. So we're kind of excited about that. So the box has been mounted and they've begun the process of installing and plumbing the pump on it. So. Other than that, I have a request of the board and or management that was born of a comment I made at the last meeting as pertains to the documents that are attached to the township fire department site. This is a respectful request, is that they be moved out to a main or more accessible spot on the website. Number one, I think it would be easier for people to get to. I've talked to a number of people that are, I think in a discussion we had last week, and I'd made a comment, and Supervisor Stibbe said, well, they certainly pertain to the fire department, so where else should they be? It's just my opinion that they'd be more readily accessible somewhere more out front on the page, like recent news or something like that. My other concern with having those documents under the fire department submenu is to the casual viewer. I think that would appear that the department in some way has either authored or supports those documents and the opinions that are contained in them. And if we're not able to do that, then I would appreciate an opportunity to rebut or at least question some of the questions I have as far as those documents have been produced. So that's where I am with that. So.
It's no secret that I can't stand our website, and I find it extremely difficult to find anything on. So I do agree with you there, Chief. Those documents are on there because people were screaming transparency. So I guess.
I understand that. This is my personal point of view, but being a department head, I think that by reproducing those under the auspices of the township fire department, though, to the casual observer, would lend credence to the fact that the department has somehow had a hand in either authoring those documents or that we support them. And from that standpoint of transparency, I think that would misguide people. That and that's born from, you guys know the comments that I had made at the last meeting. So.
Well, then we'll find a creative solution. But the reality is, there's people that are here today that said that through this entire process, we needed more clarification, more communication, more outreach. And that was its intent, authors or not.
I appreciate that.
if it would make you feel better to put it under recent news or find a more creative title. We've actually been debating back and forth as to
the last 3
what do we
days.
You were
call
ahead of
these
me on it then.
communications, because
Yeah,
it is, it's a catch-22. Everybody wants transparency and nobody wants transparency. So they will remain on the website. We'll find a better way to
to label them or.
find a linear pursuit to those documents.
Yeah, and I just, and I want you to understand these were born out of questions that were brought to me as where, you know, I heard this document, that where do I find it? At which point you know, prior to the last meeting, there was only one document. Now after the last meeting, I believe there's 9 or 10 on there now. And
I
hadn't-
don't think 9 or 10 got added.
No.
No, there's like 4 or 5 under department documents, and now there's 4, I believe, under miscellaneous, under the fire department. And so prior, there was just the one, it was the answering the FAQs to the Aplex questions.
I think the other ones have been on there quite a while, because I know the one that gives the differences between paramedics, EMTs, and MFR has been on there well over a month.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'd just like to add, I mean, if you have questions about that document, I mean, then we need to hear those questions. You know what I mean? Of whatever your questions are.
Okay, do you want to do that? And can we, I came in with 3 or 4 pages of stuff today, but then past experiences told me I'll keep my statements this morning.
Well, we have a
Sweet.
meeting Thursday.
We have a
Sweet and
meeting this
simple.
Thursday.
We
We
have a
can
meeting
address your
Thursday.
questions.
So,
I mean,
And in the meantime, we'll find a clean way to navigate to those documents that aren't under the fire department, even though you understand the reason, if they're about a fire department, we're best to find fire department documents, no matter who penned it, than to a fire department. But we can figure out we've already actually been talking about how to best navigate.
okay,
So,
I appreciate that.
I have one question for you, Chief.
Yes.
2 grass fires, Southside Station. I know of one, which was the MacArthur pit, which we'll discuss on the 15th as well. But what is the second?
Well, I don't, yeah, I have the stats in front of me. I don't have the run sheet. That was a day I was not on duty, but I'll find that out for you.
Okay. Yes.
So
are
we
you-
did have, unless they're referring to, there was one out on North Point Shores that technically was the auspices of the North Side Fire Department, but we sent our grass rig out there to assist and counted that as a.
I didn't know if
unless
that's
it,
where
so.
that second fire came in, if under
So-
the brush trucks.
Okay,
Were you done with your report?
yes.
Okay, so I just have a few questions, follow up from the meeting that Michelle and I had with you. There was discussion about giving a raise to the paid on calls, and you were gonna prepare a memo to the board. to
Yeah,
request
but
that.
I would like to do that in conjunction with input from the paid on call staff.
Why would you
to
ask
have-
the staff? I mean, I don't understand.
Well, this is on behalf of the paid on calls, and they've certainly been driving the not that I disagree, but they've been driving the majority of the conversation. And I want an opportunity to sit down with them and let them know that I'm actually going to come to the board with a proposal. And I don't want to go through the exercise of doing that and then find out they don't approve of, or if they wanted a different amount than I'm asking for, or the budget can sustain or whatever. So,
I mean, we did discuss an amount. And that was something that was gonna come to the board, and the board was gonna discuss it. I mean, I don't think anybody can come to the board and say, well, I want a 10% raise, or I want a, $5 raise an hour. I mean, I think that's a board decision, and it's a recommendation from you.
right.
But, I mean, it sounds like this has been kind of getting to them for quite some time, that they haven't received a raise. And I thought that was coming to today's meeting, so we could make a motion and approval and make that happen.
No, I apologize for
That's-
that, but I
It
want,
was my understanding too, that you were going to draft a memo to put in the board packet. And it was going to be to request a raise for the paid on calls. And I think the whole gist of the conversation is let's do it, let's get it going,
Right.
let's get them their raise. And I don't know what's being delaying that. I mean, I don't know why we have to discuss with them
Right, how much?
how much, I mean, we know as the board what the budget could sustain. I mean, if they want 20%, we know the budget can't sustain that. So we're very limited on what,
yeah, well, like it or not, I guess the only explanation I can give you is that this is a combination department. Is not specifically a full-time, it's not specifically a volunteer, and there are some inherent operational quirks that go along to that, and not, I don't want you to think I'm sounding condescending or snippy, but being as it's a combination department, I want you to realize that doing things without discussing them with the paid on call and volunteer arm of this department, I think is part of what got us into the situation we're into. We need to include them. I'm just presenting that I would like to sit down and talk with them and include them in this conversation before I do a memo and present anything to the board.
I can't imagine any of them saying, no, I don't want to. raise
don't want it, not big enough, not taking it. I mean, I just
I
don't see that
I don't-
happening.
I don't.
Trustee Reiner.
Dave, from my point of view, I can't speak for the entire board, as you know, but it's your job, I think, to have those conversations. But then you're the point person that we work with to hear from you what the gist of your conversations are. And I don't know, I would assume you've had those conversations before you met with, one element of the board here to talk about it. And if you haven't, my position would be, yes, have that, but don't want 20 memos or whatever we want, or 14. We want a memo from you as to what you recommend based on your knowledge of your department's needs and your knowledge of what the budget is in your department. That's where I come from. And I'm open to any other comments from the board.
I think you hit it on the head. And we do have an appointment, I believe, Michelle, Laura and I, to sit with you on the 15th, this
Mhm.
Thursday. Because it seems like in several conversations, and various members of this board have asked certain tasks to be done. I know just in conversation to
Well,
Laura.
I have a few more I would like an update on. The Indeed, you said that you're gonna narrow it down to 5. It was my understanding that interviews were gonna take place this week. And it may not be this week, like as soon as tomorrow. I thought those were gonna take place, but. And then there were 6 or 7 of the 6 and 7, you had a couple that you were gonna possibly interview from the previous Indeed ad.
There were
There were
3
2.
left over from the previous account that we're still interested in interviewing. Last Thursday and Friday, I had recontacted each of the individuals and asked them to give me best possible dates and times to schedule. I told them I recontact them this week. I think where you're going is I did have 2 individuals that said Wednesdays would be best for them.
Well, I think we need to tell the person we're interviewing, we're doing interviews on, Tuesday and Wednesday between noon and 5. When can I put you down? And if that doesn't work, then figure something, you know what I mean? We can't do like 1 a day. That's just my opinion. And then there were gonna be some a diagram on the structure of that we talked about, my little squiggly drawings of when people come in, you know what I mean? If they're a brand new firefighter, then what does it go to? How many years experience do they need to do the next steps through that?
Kind of like a
process?
flow chart
Yeah,
on how to get
Right.
somebody from beginning to an officer level.
Yeah, I believe I know what you're talking about.
I thought.
Laura had a
when we
little
met that
diagram.
Steve was gonna, or not Steve, Christopher had prepared something.
Well, Chris Stevens, that was the PowerPoint on the truck, the diagram that you're referring to, and
Oh,
the 1 year, the year by year scope of practice that we've dialogued out for where we'd like to be at the beginning of each fiscal year for the next 5 years. I had sent an email to clerk the other day that said I would like to present those to the ad hoc committee, so they had a chance to peruse them, so that when we brought them up at the board, they would be familiar with them, which I did pass out at the meeting yesterday
So-
morning. So
My question is, why does the ad hoc committee have to look at that? Because right now I thought the ad hoc committee's task was pros and cons of different options. And that's not an option, that's a flow chart that really has nothing to do with what the ad hoc committee's task is.
well,
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the purpose was.
No, I think that we made it extremely clear at the previous meeting of, let's get all the options on the table, pros and cons, and go from there. It was crystal clear, so.
I'm sorry, but for my chair, apparently not, because I'm being asked a number of tasks without datelines and then being called out for, I'm trying to run these through
Yeah.
a process.
And this,
And I would
this isn't the format to even have this discussion. I think that these discussions will be best served on Thursday, the 15th. And then if the board so wishes, take other avenues and every avenues. But I think it is inherently the board's position to ask the department head these questions. I mean, these are things that have been on a list, whether it would be for the past 2 weeks through the clerk and the treasurer sitting down with you, or the clerk and myself sitting down with you, or the ad hoc members. So when there's tasks presented, the realization is that we have the anticipation that those tasks will come to fruition. But yes, Ms. Trustee Fuller.
What meeting is on the 15th?
We have a weekly meeting because we're trying to improve communication with the fire department and the board. So I think we've done it for about 6 weeks now. 5 weeks. I've been at every one. Nathan's been at 2, Laura's been at 2, Cash has been at 1. I think I went to 1 solo, so it's been
Weekly meeting of who?
of members of the board, usually
3 members and
2,
2 or 3.
3, and
And the chief.
chief, and sometimes there's a firefighter there too.
Is this just a group that's come together and does it?
Well, and I haven't been.
It was
involved in the
suggested by
last
the
2.
personnel committee to help improve communications.
So,
Well, it would be nice if
But I feel like we haven't gotten anywhere because I feel like there's still a lack of communication because I leave these meetings thinking one thing's gonna happen. And then I come here and it hasn't happened as we discussed. So I still feel like we're losing communication.
Trustee Fuller.
Was the rest of the board aware of these?
No. No, and I think that gets to the point is it's kind of a hybrid scenario, and it's not just a set group of individuals of trustees or the 3 primary elected officials. It's just an opportunity to sit down on a weekly basis with a department head that we've historically have always said that there's a failure of communication. So how best to foster communication by other than sitting down and having discussions of what's going on, what is the plan, how do we move forward? And here we are as a board, looking at some of these discussions that have already taken place and how certain things would be implemented. And this isn't, I guess, at this point in time, it gets borderline of, is this the format to have some of these discussions? But it's trying to keep accountability and to improve communications. And if we don't do everything as in our power humanly possible as members of this board to interact and have those communications, then there's never going to be any positive momentum for trustee Reiner.
And I don't disagree with that concept. Here's my problem is at least Mr. Foley and myself weren't aware of these meetings on the, and when people were talking about a meeting on the 15th, and I thought, oh my God, I got to change my schedule. So I didn't even know about a meeting on the 15th, and obviously didn't know about 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever it's been of other meetings. At least two of us feel like we're in the dark. I don't know how to fix that. I think, though, this board can only act as a board. And I want to keep reminding folks of that, that we're all elected individually and we have our function here. But as a board, we act as a board. And so my point is that the rest of the board at least needs to have a report of some kind at these meetings of anything, rather than just all of a sudden questions are being asked about from a meeting that we don't know anything about. So we need to have some feedback and information before we get here and are blindsided by that. So I'd appreciate figure out that procedure too.
Noted, most definitely. Because there's been no action, obviously, it's just they sit down with a department head, but to your point, trustee Reinhardt and trustee Foley.
And to that point, I mean, I have no problem with designating from the board, designating individuals to have these meetings, but with an expectation of some knowledge coming back before we hear about it, okay?
Well, and it came from personnel, and it was the supervisor and the clerk. that had
And
met.
cash.
And I'm not, and I have no problem with designating the full-time members of the board, you know, the employed members of the board, let's put it that way, to be doing this. It's just that the rest of us need to have some knowledge through a report or something before we get here and start asking questions of a department head.
Trustee Foley?
Do we have a fire committee?
We never did disband the fire committee. The fire committee's members consist of trustee Lappin, clerk Plavich, and myself. That had been used for a few months as we were going through the specifications and the allocations of the equipment millage monies for resources. And we have not met really since. It's been quite some time.
I don't think
since.
we've met since the fire truck was ordered.
Yeah, so. But moving forward, is there anything else to add at this point for your report, Chief Robbins?
No, I just wanted to add for clarification and along that line is in the absence of fire committee meetings and the ad hoc fire committee being stood up, all three of the things aforementioned are definitely different than how we've operated in the past, and a new model of how the fire department will operate and flow, which was my understanding is specifically one of the things the ad hoc committee is supposed to be coming to the board with. So, I mean, I guess that's why I chose that route. If that was a horrible misunderstanding on my part, I apologize, but.
That may have been the original message to the ad hoc committee, but my understanding for the meeting is what was already stated, is that the ad hoc committee was now charged with exploring all possible options, bringing them back to us with pros and cons, just as was said. And so that I thought was the more recent charge to that committee, when it was basically requested to reform,
I would
reformulate and move forward. So, and I know that's a lot. I mean, because you're looking at lots of options and what are actually available options too. But I mean, we had options that Mr. Lappin talked about, for example, that I like, but they're not available to us right now. And so, and that would be somewhat on the model that we talked about of the East Presqu'île Township model. But we have no such group offering to provide those services. So what we want is options that are available and the pros and cons from the committee. That's what we're hoping for, isn't that? Or did
Yeah,
miss the
and I
point?
think Trustee Lappin, you could probably speak to that because it sounds like you have scheduled yet one more meeting on Monday.
Do you want me to talk about that now, or you want to?
Well, we might as well before we move on to our other department report. I mean,
Either after that, or might as well get the north
Yeah.
out of the way, and then we can talk about what the
I'm
ad hoc
fine
committee has
with
done
that.
to date.
so.
We're
Well,
gonna come back to this.
we're gonna come back to it, yes, by all means. Chief Forbush.
Mr. Stevie, I wondered if we would, if the things that you guys, you might like to look at the rescue unit that we brought for you to look at first, so that we get it accurate.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's stretch the legs real quick. This is in regards to a request I made because of the potential sale of the existing resources, i.e. the 2 Tango units. If upon sale, how to utilize millage monies within the same compound of the request to the taxpayers. So we now have an option that is an emergency rescue rig that's in the parking lot from Presqu'île, just to look at.
What's a tango unit?
Ambulance.
So we're looking at this
Just right
as an
up.
option to buy?
No,
Oh,
just
just-
for,
An
what are our
example.
options if we ever sell ambulances, what we would need by licensure, et cetera.
So we're on a field trip.
Okay, thank you very much for the stretch of the legs and some fresh air. Chief Warbush, would you like to continue to present your report?
Thank you. I've got a couple of my colleagues with me today that are going to help with a brief report on North Side operations. We gave you a rundown at 30 days. Now we're at about 100 days. Like to let you know where we are at the moment. Your awesome AV gal is booting up the presentation, and she'll have that up momentarily. Very good. Originally, as I mentioned, we came to you in January and gave you a progress report at that point. And now we're at the more or less 100-day route or point. The staffing of the North Side Station is continuing with 1 city lieutenant, captain, or senior firefighter with Fire Officer 2 certification, who is a paramedic, and 1 city firefighter, paramedic, or firefighter EMT with expertise in fire engine operation. There's always a senior officer on duty at the city station as well. So there's at least 2 officers operating at all times, 1 at the north and 1 at headquarters. Next. This is the apparatus being used at the North Side Station. Alpha 102 is a late model ALS ambulance, and we also brought a city engine just for familiarity and so forth. However, we have provided training with the paid on call personnel that were on operation of our equipment as well as yours. Next. Our deployment strategy is the closest ALS unit the EMS runs. North side is faster to some of the city and obviously closer to the north side of the township. An ECHO or rescue unit, ECHO is a non-transporting paramedic unit or a rescue unit, a mini pumper from the city is sent on high acuity calls, CPR calls, that kind of thing. The American Heart Association has determined that the optimum team size for cardiac arrest is 6. So on the 3 cardiac arrests that we've had in the north side since January 1st, we've deployed between 7 and 8 responders, sometimes paid on call, always personnel from city and north side both. North side does respond to city fires as city responds to north side fires. Some but not all city-based personnel respond to north side fires, and backfill is always used. Next. Emergency responses on the north side, 149 EMS runs since January 1st. The vast majority of those required an ALS 1 level of care, which means probably IVO2 and a monitor, that kind of thing. ALS 2 is your cardiac arrest. That's the yellow slide, a much smaller group. And then the other lighter green is basic life support care was what was necessary for those patients, even though we responded with ALS resources. Next. There had been 4 fire responses in the north side during this time period. One was a storage building fire on Bernice Lane. We fielded 8 AFD personnel and 2 paid on call personnel responded as well from the township. We sent an AFD engine, rescue, ambulance chief, and the ATFD tanker with your paid on call personnel. Did a great job. We also used the Presqu'île tanker on that incident. Probably didn't need all those resources, but we didn't want the fire to extend past the initial building into the woods right next door. We had a vehicle fire on US 23 North. We sent 4 personnel with an engine and a rescue. And Presqu'île sent an engine as well. So we had about 6 or 7 people on that scene. Our big wildland grass fire on North Point Shores was quite an operation. We sent 8 AFD personnel. There were 6 ATFD paid on call personnel with your brush truck and your tanker. The tanker was deployed by city personnel, but it's your tanker. We also had an AFD engine, rescue chief, ATF brush truck, and township tanker there as well. And we had an interesting apartment fire alarm. It was an alarm system malfunction, but the residents had already evacuated, so it was kind of a big deal. We sent a full first alarm assignment from the city on that one, 8 personnel, 2 engines, 2 ambulances, and then the next day we had follow up with our CRR officer to make sure that the system was reset correctly and the problem that caused the malfunction was corrected. Next. The response metrics that we look at are response time and a lot more. It's only one of the metrics that we use, but our turnout time in the north over the past 100 days or so is consistently less than 1 minute. We average it up to 1, but actually 2/3 of the time it's between 0 and 1. Response time to the scene throughout the entire North District, which is well more than the 5-mile circle required by NFPA, is 5.76 minutes, which meets and exceeds NFPA 1710. And we are sending, of course, 2 EMS providers, at least 1 paramedic, usually 2, and an ALS unit immediately. Next. We'll pass that. That's just training hours at each level. I think you're familiar with it. I would like to take just a moment to talk about training activity, though, because I think the expertise of the personnel responding, both your paid on call and our full time, is very much germane to the situation. So if my Deputy Chief Training Officer, Rob Edmonds, would come up for just a moment, I'd like to share some of the initiatives that he's working on.
Real brief, not this brief. Brief. All right, so some of the things that we're doing for you guys as township, I'm gonna actually remove this if you don't mind. We've had 2 training sessions with your paid on calls. At each of the training sessions, I think we've had 6 to 8, might have been 10 at either one of those training sessions. Total of 11 personnel total is what we've had combined over the 2. Some of the training that we've done initially, it was just a department meeting from the north side as far as perspectives, as far as things that we expected of them, and some things we were going to work towards in this 6-month contract. The second one, we actually did some orientation as to our fire apparatus and our ambulances, so they understood what equipment was carried on it, and gave them a brief overview of some of the things as far as expectations we have operationally with your paid on call personnel. Trustee Poley was actually at one of the training sessions that we did. He was able to observe some of the things that we were going through with your paid on calls. So they've been receptive when they've been there. So it's been a good thing for us. So. What's that?
Next slide, please. Don't go in.
I'm not going in.
Okay. All right, tell a little bit about the initiatives at the station.
Okay, really quick, I'm gonna give you a handout, if you don't mind. This is just some of the bullet points of some of the stuff I'm gonna talk about and some information for you guys to read about later. So for me, my primary role within the Alpena Fire Department is deputy chief. Basically, I assist the chief in administrative stuff throughout the day. My second function, which has probably become a higher priority, has been as training officer. And as training officer, my job is to help educate these guys on shift and your paid on call, which has been an added value to your contract, is to train them and get them response ready, basically. In doing so, they are fire and EMS related tasks is what we look to achieve in our training throughout the days. I've been doing this for about 18 months. Prior to the 18 months, we probably weren't logging probably 500 or 600 hours of training annually. If you go to the third page back, you guys will actually see some of the numbers, not only on the types of training that we've done, but the content of the training that we've done. And I'll go over that here in just a minute. My focus when I do the training is high quality training. So it's not just sit down, watch a video, talk about it, and we're done. It's 90% of it. Andy can attest to it. He participates in it every day. We do shift training as a shift, and then we also have department training, which is done so that if there's new changes in operations or ways we're doing something, we convey it to each shift from leadership to our guys, so we're all on the same page as to what the expectations are. So there's never really any doubt as to what we expect as leaders within our department. So that's something we do every month. Usually it's done every week. When we do this training, we try and get training done before noon every day. And when we can't, we come back and revisit it later in the afternoon or even in the evening. And weekends are not excluded. So we focus on high quality training, realistic training, intense training, skills-oriented and team-based. We also make sure that it meets or exceeds our mission and vision statement. I actually gave you a copy of the mission and vision statement that we have from Alpena Fire Department that Chief Forbush developed over a year ago. So we do have metrics that we use to measure these things too. When we do that, there's governing standards that I gear my training around, and there are requirements for the fire service. We go by NFPA 1021, which is the standards for fire officer professional qualifications. NFPA 1001, which is standards for firefighter professional qualifications. NFPA 1500, which is a standard on fire department occupational safety, health, and wellness program. That basically dictates our rapid intervention team and our respiratory protection program. Those are things that we gear that specific training to so that we meet those standards. OSHA 29 CFR 1910-120 is our respiratory protection standard, which basically goes along our mask fit testing, making sure all of our guys are mask fit tested in our SCBAs, our N95 masks that everybody's wearing right now due to COVID. Also our powered air purifying respirators. So we actually have 5 respirators that we get mask fit tested on to meet that compliance of the law. My OSHA Part 74 is another one that we follow, obviously, to make sure we're meeting state guidelines. And the big one that we do is the ISO standards. So one of the things we're looking at doing is how we can reduce our ISO rating, which I know you guys are interested in from the township perspective. In talking with Eric Abbott and going through numerous webinars and whatnot, every year annually per employee, it doesn't matter if they're career or they're paid on call, must go through 192 hours per employee of annual training in the following things. Minimum of 6 hours of hazmat. Officers must go through a minimum of 12 hours of officer development, 12 hours of driver's training, 18 hours of facilities training, which is basically practical evolutions. That counts for 3 of your 9 points. So it can't be, we're going to watch a video on the screen today, and we're going to count that towards the 18 points or the 18 hours. We literally have to go out and do hands-on applications for a minimum of 18 hours per person per year annual. That's an ISO requirement. And they're all geared towards being NFPA 1001 compliant. So for us, so you also know all of our fire officers are Fire Officer 1 and 2 certified. Several are Fire Officer 3 certified under the old school, but all of our officers and all of our upcoming officers have to be Fire Officer 1 and 2 certified before they can even apply for the promotional process. New hires, as far as orientation, obviously we just hired 4 people within our department. We do an 8-hour orientation session, which is EMS related skills, 8 hours, which is fire-based skills. And then we actually put them, they're on a 1-year probation. They have over 50 tasks that they have to complete within that 1-year period. They also do a 30-day ride time where we evaluate them and orient them to the positions of being a basic EMT firefighter or a paramedic firefighter. So we don't just throw them out in the system. We actually make sure that they're proficient. If they're not, we do monthly evaluations to make sure if there's a problem, they know right away, month by month, here's the problems, or here's what you're doing really well. So we do have a metrics that we do evaluate those people right through probation. If you look in the handouts that you have, 2020, we logged in 4,415 hours of training, plus an additional 535 hours of EMS-related training that is logged in a different database for a total of 4,950 total man-hour training for 2020. Already for 2021, we've logged in 1,360 hours of training, with 650 hours being logged in just in the month of March. These guys are doing 3 to 4 hours of training probably every day as a department. A lot of our training that's been focused has been on the North Side project, which has had to do with pump operations, water shuttles, ice rescue, basically new fire ground deployment as to how we deploy, because now our model has changed just a little bit because of how we respond. Because now we have people coming from different locations. So we've done a lot of it to make sure operational readiness and effectiveness is much better to serve you guys and the city. So it's a joint effort on this. Yep. So really quick, if you go on the back, some other things that we do, technical rescue disciplines that we train on, rope rescue, trench collapse, vehicle extrication, stabilization, hazardous materials, ice and water rescue, and it's done through a team of people. It's not just me teaching. I have other people that help me, which Chief's going to go through, I'm sure, in some more slides. We have 4 or 5 people that are involved in fire-based training and in EMS training that help me along the way. So it's not just me, it's other people actively involved in this as well. So our purpose, honestly, in my role as Deputy Chief Training Officer, is operational readiness to meet the community's needs, and time is not ours. It is the community that we serve. Time is never our friend, ever. So understand our response metrics, our training, everything is to make us more effective and more response ready. With that, thank you, Rob. That's all I have.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
You said they do training every day,
Correct.
usually before noon.
Yep.
So are the people that are stationed here in North Side missing that training?
Nope, they're actually expected to attend the training as well.
Okay,
So they come and get the exact same one.
okay, okay.
One of the things that's on there on the bullet points, so when I say that we do training, each month I assign different things for training. This month it's turnout drills. So basically as a shift, all 8 of them get together and they compete for time as to who can get fully dressed in their SCBA, turnout gear, everything ready to rock out of the truck. On weekends, Saturdays and Sundays are pump apparatus days. So they have to actually do driver's training. They have to go and draft out of a dry hydrant. They have to do it as a systemic approach to fire ground operations. So even on the weekends, we do training. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yep. Thank you, Rob. Yep.
Next slide, please. There are 4 parts of our education program. Very briefly, we offer EMS initial education. Dan Hibner is our coordinator for that. MFR, EMT, MFR to EMT matriculation, and starting May 14th, paramedic through North Central College at Alpena Fire. We also offer EMS continuing ed, and the virtual continuing ed has gotten very, very popular. We had over 20 students last night or night before for an online CE program. We've got a fire agility program, which some of our newer employees are finding challenging, but they're getting through it. They're doing the job. Brett Miller and Tyler Sushek are both instructors that handle that program, and we're going to use that for new hires as well. And then we have fire rescue specialized training things designed for ISO or any low frequency, high risk event. Next slide. We'll go past that. That's obviously one of the things we train in. Next slide, please. We also provide monthly training for paid on calls. This particular session, I think they were going through all of the aspects and equipment on the mini pumpers so that they would be familiar with it as we are. We're very fortunate to have one of the only sets of jaws in the area that's able to cut through boron and reinforced steel, the latest technology stuff. We don't have a lot of call for it, but if it's needed, we have it, and we wanted to make sure that Alpena Township personnel were proficient with that as well. Next. I know I'm long-winded, I'm sorry, but I'd like to introduce Andy Marceau for just a moment to talk about community risk reduction, because we have at least a couple of lives saved on the north side since the 1st of January, and I want to let him tell about that. Andy?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all what you do. I am an Alpena Township Southside resident. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I am the community risk reduction captain with the city of Alpena. Just briefly, it's a process to identify and prioritize local risk, followed by the integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce their occurrence and impact. I am very passionate about that. I take this every day I go to work and want to reduce risk, want to make everybody safer, but it's not something I can just do. It takes the whole department. men and female, male and female in my department, we work together. And community risk is focused on education, not so much on the enforcement portion of it. So just briefly, some accomplishments has happened in Alpena Township. In October of 2020, I was able to receive a grant from the Northeastern Michigan Community Foundation for $3,000. I was able to purchase 150 carbon monoxide alarms through Home Depot to place out in all of Alpena County. I didn't just put it in the city. We are paramedics. I wanted to put them all out, and I've been on every township in Alpena County doing that. I can happily say I have placed 130 of those carbon monoxide alarms since January 1. I have 20 more in my office, and I have a few more people to hit. But one carbon monoxide alarm has already saved the lives of 2 of your residents. On January 27th of 2021, I personally installed 3 smoke alarms and 1 CO alarm in a residence on French Road. This was an older couple that have a wood fireplace located in their home. At first, I was leery of the fireplace already, but they love their fireplace. A mere 2 weeks later, I was contacted by their owner's son stating that their CO alarm was going off on Saturday, February 13th, 2021. Happened to be after a hockey game our boys play together. I had them evacuate the residents, and I immediately contacted Northside Fire and had them respond with a carbon monoxide tester to check out for CO. Immediately our crews entered the building, we got high readings. Thank God everybody was already out. The fire crews continued to investigate the furnace, the hot water heater, the stove, and they were able to isolate it to the fireplace that the people were enjoying. They extinguished the fireplace fire and then made sure that it got inspected correctly and got fixed. I actually happened to work the next Sunday, north side. I absolutely went back to the house and made sure. It's kind of scary at first. I went to the door and it was about probably 9:30, and I don't know what time people get up, but they weren't answering the door. I will tell you, I got a little bit worried. I then called their son and their daughter-in-law, and luckily they were okay. But again, we went and double checked, and I followed up later on to make sure they had what appeared to be a cracked flute in their chimney. So without a doubt, this carbon monoxide alarm saved these 2 elderly people's lives. I mean, it would have built up over time. I can tell you the gentleman did go to the ER. He was checked out and sent home because he wasn't having a headache and different things. Quickly, since January 1, I have been putting smoke alarms and carbon monoxide in Southside and Northside Fire. I've been in 13 homes in Northside. I've been in 14 homes on the South Side. I've installed 53 smoke alarms between the 2 sides and 27 carbon monoxide alarms. Each install gets a fact sheet about creating an escape plan, carbon monoxide safety, smoke alarms in your home, and another program I'm really pushing is called Smart 911. This is a free program through 911. You can put it on your cell phones, you can put it on a laptop. It's awesome. For somebody that has kids, I like it because if my daughter or son were to call 911, maybe they can't talk, maybe whatever's going on, they can text 911, but their location comes up and emergency personnel can be sent. So it's great. And we limited on time. Some of the partnerships that I have in my short time doing this job, I work with the Senior Citizen Center, the American Red Cross, Alpena Public Schools, Mid-Michigan Alpena, numerous service groups, My Prevention through the State Fire Marshal's Office, Friends Together, and of course, Smart 911. I'm also happy to say all the smoke alarms and the carbon monoxide alarms that I have put up in Alpena County have all been free. I really stress that because I get them from the American Red Cross and through My Prevention, which is a state fire marshal's office where I get free alarms, and then through a grant. So that's pretty important to me that I keep able to keep getting them and keep putting it up and making our community safer as a whole, not just the city of Alpena. Thank you.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoy it. Yeah, you can see, I could sit up here all day and talk about it. It's just one of my passions. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I love it.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, CRR isn't part of the agreement. It's just the right thing to do, and Andy does a great job with it. I think I'll end at that point. Operations in the north are going very, very well. There have really been no missteps, no problems. The paid-on calls are great to work with. The staff here is great to work with, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Orbush? before? Seeing none?
Oh, backfill, I did want to ask you something, Bill, on backfill. What's that? I mean, I take it that means personnel come in behind someone that's going to the main station
Yeah.
for training or whatever, but what's that mean? How
It
does
means
that
that
look?
if ambulance number 1 is here and that crew needs to go in for training and they're going to be tied up for 2 hours, 3 hours, then ambulance 2 comes here to cover the area.
Okay, so it's with existing staff that's
Right.
not part of the training?
Right,
Not everybody getting
exactly.
the training at the same time?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sometimes that's admin personnel because we're not as involved as the shift is. We want the shift to be involved as a team and we don't want anybody to be missing. So we try and cover where we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Lappin.
All right, we've met 3 times, 2 times, 3 times, 2 times, 2 times. And through those meetings, we have determined that, and I have a consistent agenda that we use so that we don't to sort of reinvent it each time, although we will add to it from time to time. And so the process by which we've been commissioned to do is to set up what would be the pros and the cons of various types of operations for the fire department. And we've broadened it to 2 since the last time we spoke. The first time we spoke, I told you that the 4 options that we had talked about was 1, to disband the fire department altogether. 2, to operate by others, either a nonprofit fire department or a for-profit fire department, similar to many of the nonprofit fire departments that would be around here. I'm unaware of any for-profit fire departments in this area, and I'm not sure that there are any for-profit fire departments in Michigan, but nonetheless, it was an option. 3 was to contract or combine with another municipality. 4 was to operate our own fire department. 5, and the new one, would be a countywide fire authority. And 6, yet to be completely discussed, both of these would be a hybrid fire department agreement. Cash has more information on that than I do. And so that will be the last 2 items that we really need to talk about at the ad hoc committee relative to the pros and cons are the items 5 and 6, that being the countywide fire authority, and 6 being a hybrid fire department. So what we've tried to do to date is to use a little bit of a chart that I've whipped up that would simply allow us to write a pro in one column and a con in the next item, next column. And we've been chipping away at that. And obviously we've discounted option number 1 altogether. It's just a bad idea. And we're just coming up with the pros and cons of the other ones. And so it's not a complete list. The homework assignment was to take those pros and cons and try to individually, as committee members, write down their ideas. Instead of sort of trying to spontaneously come up with those things at the meeting, let's have a plan to come back so that there are other ways to look at it. And so we hope to have that done. I think what I'll do next Monday at 7:30 is our next meeting, is to just concentrate solely on that. No, we'll try not to bird walk much, and just get this thing done so that I can put this into some sort of a format that the trustees can look at, and then go from there. I do believe that there are areas within some of the pros and cons that we've come up with that are certainly worth discussion, And so that probably wouldn't happen, I wouldn't think, at the ad hoc level. I would think that that would be more at this level. And then to develop a plan from there. So I would hope that by our next our next meeting, doesn't have to be a regular one, just whatever our next meeting is, I can probably have that all emailed out to all of the trustees and the ad hoc committee. And basically just get the okay from the ad hoc that, yeah, that's what we talked about and that's what we agreed to. And then shoot that information out to all of you. So I would look to that within the next 2 weeks.
Michelle?
So I'm trying to get a timeline in my head. So Monday you guys meet,
Right?
and it should be your last session to figure out the pros and cons.
Yeah, as long as
then-
we're all doing our homework, I don't see any reason why. it shouldn't.
Okay. So is there any reason like within the next week, we couldn't meet as a board and go review that, or?
We have a board meeting the 26th.
26 is our next regularly scheduled meeting.
So
It
that's,
would be a week later.
But,
yeah,
well, and,
Yeah,
and you guys are, and I've seen and kind of watched some of the tidbits. And it seems like some of the pros and cons are detail oriented.
Yes.
or unknowns.
Of not knowing the details
Right.
of certain parameters.
Right.
And so there's been, so how do we, because the reality is a timeline, because we're already at April 13th. So how do we run things concurrent? How do we maximize the window of time that we have? Because
I would like to just make a suggestion that since we are working on the pros and cons, we did talk about, well, a month ago, doing a public forum and getting the public's input. I mean, that would be a part of it. But as far as the proposal from the city, I mean, we have some questions about more detail that, I think we need to ask those questions and figure out the details of that. So we actually have that to do a comparison of which route we want to go depending on these choices that the ad hoc committee has gone through. What are your thoughts about creating a committee to review the proposal in detail? I thought you would be a good person, Russ and Steve.
You mean to
and-
meet with the city is what you're saying? Or just us?
Either
or-
they could have a meeting and that, I mean, just to go through the proposal and see what questions you have and, I mean, just a thought, just for us to talk about. And then we'd have those details to have in a comparison to what the ad hoc committee has done and then.
I guess what details are you talking
The details of the proposal, like any
about?
questions.
That we'd have to get from the city.
Yeah. If we have
Right, so they would
questions,
have to meet with the city to get those. Okay.
But they could meet ahead of time and
Right.
determine what questions.
and
Well,
that's
just a
true,
thought.
yeah.
I mean, one of
mean,
the things that I wish we would have had, and this is in not deference to the city whatsoever, so please don't take my comment wrong. But I would have liked to have seen more than one proposal. I would have liked to have seen someone step forward, an entity step forward that would be willing to create a department. If, so we know we want to have, we know that the ad hoc committee on one of its very first meetings, from those 4 original types of operations, we felt that the operation of our own fire department was beneficial long-term. And so we think that we could probably try to figure out what that procedural stuff looks like in having our own fire department. I would like to have, if it's contracted services, then I think that aside from knowing how many people are going to be staffed someplace and how many, the procedural sort of things, I'd like to know what this looks like long-term. Because as I've said all along, that unless we have some kind of a long-term understanding, because if I'm looking at this, I'm not looking at this for a 8-year term. I'm looking at this for a 25-year agreement. And so if we can't control the costs long-term, we're going to be in exactly the same position that we are today with operating out of our general fund. It's just seems to me, without details, that we can't plan long-term. And I know that there are a myriad of issues, whether we run our own department, whether we contract it out, whether a nonprofit comes in, all those issues remain in place. The physical building is inappropriate, looking long-term. Staffing is probably always going to be an issue. And so I would like to get a feel for what all of that looks like. And so I do look at it fundamentally from a financial standpoint, but not solely from a financial standpoint. And so I think that more knowledge, not only for me, but this body, and no doubt an ad hoc committee, that would either help steer the ship in a direction, one way or the other. So that would be nice. But we still feel as though we should finish our objective and then present it to you, and then go from there. As far as having a sort of another committee to I guess discuss what would be in an agreement. I suppose you could do that simultaneously, although it sort of presumes that that's the direction that the township would be taking. And I don't know if that's wasting the city's time or wasting everybody else's time, if that's not a direction we're going to take.
Well, and at this point in time, we don't, I think that's the exercise that we're in, as the ad hoc progresses through the scenarios. If the lack of clarity to the proposals that were provided by the city needs to have further discussion as to what those details would be long-term, et cetera, et cetera. If we can have those conversations, like Laura had mentioned, that information can then be taken back to the ad hoc committee, because if some of the cons are detail oriented, which they are,
Yes.
because of the lack of conversation, if you have that conversation concurrent and you have it brought back to the ad hoc, such as a member and the chair of the ad hoc, you now have that data to actually present and discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, in that's fine. I can't imagine how comfortable I would feel as a relative layperson trying to hammer out some sort of an agreement without our township attorney available. And I suspect that the city would feel exactly the same way, that they wouldn't want to sort of shoot from the hip and try to come up with a viable agreement without a fair amount of conversation.
Well, and I think that's the conversation, that's where we find ourselves, is that's a conversation that needs to take place without any presumption of a direction. It needs to take place, because as we stand, I believe our 6-month contract with the city for services at the North Station concludes June 30th. Yes. And so time is of the essence at this point. But listening, because I think no matter what those conversations are, you're in an invaluable position as chair of the ad hoc to then at least have sound data to say, this is what, you know, to debunk, if you would, some of the questions, pros or cons, to better develop a direction in terms of the ad hoc.
Don't disagree there.
Trustee Foley, sorry.
Trustee Lavin, I'm clarify me if you can. When we're going back and asking for proposals to even send off information to the city that we would like some more information, if they were at all interested in giving it to us about our fire department. And it was brought up, a motion was made to contact the city to ask for this information. And then when it came up for a vote, two of you voted no. Is that, I guess I was confused. We were asking for, when it was said, yeah, bring it on, bring us all the proposals. Then you voted no. Does that mean you were interested in any proposals except the cities?
My reasoning was part of my own reasoning. I felt that not only was the information, the clarity part was a problem for me, but I wanted to make sure that as a member of the ad hoc committee, that the ad hoc committee had sort of unanimously agreed in a particular direction to have our own. And there would be a significant part of me that would not want to let down a committee and just sort of drive the bus over them. So I wanted to make sure that I was being true to the ad hoc committee and to my own beliefs.
But, and to that, I mean, everybody does have a voice at this table. And it's not one trustee or be another trustee. It's, the intent is we have the considerations to make for all of our citizens.
Totally agree.
And it has no affiliation to a committee. It is for the greater good. What is, and everybody's been doing their due diligence through this entire process.
Yep.
It's
I just want to correct trustee Polly. There were 3 of us that voted no to contacting the city, not 2.
Correct. Yeah, well, and that's neither here nor there. And I'm not, and I don't want to allow that to enter this table, because this table's sole purpose is to look at what the future of a department and what all options are. Now, we've gotten to a point where with the ad hoc committee that as you start getting into the proposals that were given by the city, if there's questions that sway a decision because of lack of clarity, we're at that point.
We need to know.
So we need what the questions are. We need to, and that's where, whether it be trustee Reinhardt with his background, your affiliation with already being part of the ad hoc, myself with a labor attorney, look at those options. So that way you have some answers to take back to an ad hoc and get all of these discussions going, because we're at a 6-month period and we have no plan.
Yeah,
And so
I definitely realize that. And I also, there's also concerns that I would have for those persons that if this committee, if this board, excuse me, chooses to go in a contractual agreement, that's fine. That's the prerogative of this board. I get it. But there's also a part of me that goes, geez, we're endeavoring to fill slots. And we fill these slots and we change course, and these people that have moved to a community may find themselves unemployed.
well, and that's a valid concern. And
Yeah,
I-
You want my big boy speech?
I have a clerk that tells me something on a regular basis.
I believe these people are all adults that we're hiring. And if I was
Are all what?
adults,
Okay,
and we should treat them like adults. When I am applying for jobs, I'm doing my research. I'm checking them out on the internet. I'm doing everything I can. Before I accepted this position, I was reading board minutes. I mean, that's their responsibility. They know that we are in turmoil, that a decision has not been made. They're adults. I can't hold their
no,
hands.
I'm just voicing my opinion. And so,
Just,
It also
and it's-
concerns me that why someone would, knowing that we are in this turmoil, why they'd even want to come here.
Yeah.
I mean, you worry like, what's wrong with them that they're so desperate that they're coming here?
Well,
That
I-
they're
I-
willing to risk it all.
and I think that we all have valid questions. We all have valid concerns. And that's what I truly appreciate about this board is we all bring a different piece forward to the table. We may not always agree, and that is a good thing. But what we do agree on is what is best for this community. And given the timeline, and the rate, we need to really get some answers and clarity to one direction or another. I believe that we're going on 3+ weeks that we've had proposals from the city. And there has not been really any discussion or clarification or request of exchange of communication with any members of the city. And I think at this point in time, we need to get that clarity to get the full spectrum of the picture so that whether it's options 1 through, well, 2 technically, 2 through 6, what are the viable options? Because dragging our feet and going and talking about how we got here is asinine at this point in time.
Yeah, I
It's,
agree.
it's how do we move forward from here?
I
And
agree
think
that
to
the-
move forward, we have to have communication and clarification because what we have are three proposals, but we have questions about it. So if we as a board, this is, I almost feel somewhat burdensome because we've put such a heavy task on the ad hoc committee. And you guys are, everyone that participates is doing a wonderful function. But it is the responsibility of this board to look at a true timeline and make a decision of, we need some clarification to those potentials so that that information can actually be looked at and digested appropriately. And then we can actually say, now, here's all the options on the table.
All right.
Because before we know it, June's gonna be here, and we really need to look at everything openly. And so, from my standpoint, I do feel that it may be best to have, especially yourself, involved in discussions and getting clarifications from whether it be Chief Warbush and Rachel or Matt or whoever we can actually reach out to and say, we need to sit down because what does this look like? What does that look like? And then we actually have the answers to those questions because we can't formulate any discussion or decision based upon partial truth. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
I appreciate that there's questions always with proposals that come. And your committee is probably in the best position to give us the questions. And then decide, and I'm willing to decide whether those are discussed with the city by your committee or part of your committee or all of it, or some other folks that are designated and from the board and from the chair. But the point is, first, we got to know what the questions are. I don't want to just go in and have a freewheeling discussion with folks from the city. I wouldn't want to be part of it without having an agenda of what our questions are about the proposals that have been made. And so, and they've given us three, right? 3 different options to look at here. As far as costs and controlling the cost for 25 years or 8 years, frankly, I don't know whoever's running the department, whether it's a township department or a city department, those costs are going to change and probably not get less, no matter who's running it. So then we've got to be in a position to provide what we think is the best service option for our community, for our township. And then, frankly, if it doesn't work out properly and they think we're all a bunch of idiots for doing it, there's another election coming up, and I'm willing to have someone replace me here. Because like Michelle, I was attending meetings for 5 years around here, and I still didn't feel totally prepared to do this job. But at least I had a little more of a background and preparation and some ideas that I didn't have if I hadn't done that. But the point is this, that let's figure out how we're going to formulate the questions by going through the proposals and everybody offering them, maybe through you, Nathan. And then ask to meet and talk about those things. That's one of our options. Our other option is continuing to try to hire people but to me, that's not happening fast enough. And frankly, based on the budget we've created, I've said it before, I guess I'll say it again. Based on the budget we've created, I don't think we're in a position, I mean, it's a bare bones budget, the number that we've been given. It might even be one staff person short of what we should have. That's been suggested. Can we really do it for that number? And we know that the millage doesn't support that number as it is, let alone what we would pay to be able to not only hire but keep people. To me, that's tripping stone number one.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not even getting into cost increases over the years, buildings that won't house the equipment that we probably need if we're going to have our own full-time fire department. Those are capital expenses that we haven't even planned for, frankly, in the past or now. But they're right there in front of us, and I think. So to me, we got to first come up with the questions.
So I do have a question, because I've been trying to do some research. Without regard to whether this was a fire department operated by the township or if it was some other formula. Do you know if the current millage, operational millage, is under Act 33? So is it a special assessment, or did we specifically go out looking for monies to operate the fire department for a period of time? I believe that's what we did.
Yes, it is.
So-
Latter. It's not under Public Act 33.
So under Public Act 33, one of the things that I had thought about, and I don't know that it's a viable way of looking at it now that I've done a little bit more research, was trying to establish some kind of a factor that would be pinned strictly to assessed evaluation of properties in the township. And that would be an equalizer in my eyes, that if the assessed evaluation went up, so would the operational costs to the fire department. And if they went down, so would the operational costs to the fire department. Frankly, across the board, it would trigger. And so for all practical purposes, that's what we do right now. We just don't have a matrix or a process in place that I'm aware of where we know that the assessing department is this much, and we know that each department is, X number of a factor out of the budget we develop. We develop the budget sort of backwards from where we think our revenue is going to be in, and we plug in dollars that will go into each department. So one of the things that became crystal clear to me, and I'm confident every other member on the ad hoc committee, is that 1.5 mils was simply inadequate, period. And that more likely 3 mils was the number. And so we should have gone for 4 mils several years ago, so that we could create exactly what Russ is talking about, this nest egg for whatever purposes we needed them for at some point in the future. So Public Act 33 of 1951 effectively does that. And so it's a special assessment for police and fire protection. And you can have it open-ended, or you can have that for a period of time. And since I wasn't on the board at the time, I don't know ultimately if the 1.5 was just, well, okay, let's try that because we might not get 3. So I don't know. But in any event, regardless of which way the Charter Township of Alpena chooses to operate its fire department, serious consideration has to be given to a special assessment, whether it be for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or from now on. And so somewhere along the line, we got to get familiar with this act and implement it so that we will have the funds necessary to do all the things that Mike Muller was talking about. We don't have a fire department. Economic development is going to slow. If we don't provide the services that people look forward to, then it's going to hurt us. And so let me do this. Let me continue this ad hoc committee. And if we want to, in concert, try to set up some sort of a meeting between the city and the township, and if you feel as though, as the sort of the unwitting chair of this ad hoc committee, that I would be an asset, then I'm willing to do that, just so we can get through this and just come to a conclusion on it.
And I think that's where we're in agreement. And I think that maybe, and I do appreciate it again, is that we know that you're meeting again on Monday.
Mhm.
So part of your agenda maybe is to extrapolate any and all questions as to the 3 proposals given to the city. Upon conclusion of that ad hoc, and I'll look for a motion for the creation of a supplementary committee to discuss with yourself, Russ Reinhardt, if available, and myself, with those questions coming out of the ad hoc, to start a conversation as to getting further definition of what the undefined is currently. Because
I'll make that motion.
we have a motion on the table. Is there support?
I'll
You willing?
support it.
It's been moved and supported. Further
What it-
discussion?
Can you, yeah,
Yeah.
can you give us exactly what your motion is? To
That-
create,
Supervisor Skibby, Trustee Reiner, Trustee Lappin will get the questions that the ad hoc committee has come up with, and that we have come up with, and discuss them, get the questions organized, and then meet with the city to get the answers to the questions
meet with
and
city.
bring them back to the board.
Okay,
So,
I'm willing to do that, by the way.
well, I do appreciate that, Trustee Ryan.
so who made the motion?
I did.
Laura
support
made
it.
it, you support it?
Okay, I know, but I thought Russ just said he made the motion.
No, he said he's willing
He
to.
said he was willing.
He's
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't second anything. I don't think.
We've been here a long time. I'm
Yeah.
starting to get a little.
So, any further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lappin,
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes,
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly. Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. That way, you can continue that work. We can get those questions, then we can put surplus upon getting those questions. I will send out, and if the board wants to be completely CC, do not reply to it so that we circumnavigate any OMA concern. But that way, we're all on the same page. Here's a list of questions. I'll send that email to Rachel, to Matt, and to Chief Warbush, and go from there. And upon that, we will.
So any of us who have questions can just forward them
Just
to you
forward
and
them
you
to any of
can.
us, and that way we'll put it in a pool. Yes.
One clarification for me. So I will email all the members of the ad hoc committee. And so in addition to completing the pros and cons, which is that prior motion.
Correct.
This motion is for us to develop a series of questions that we feel would be germane to the operation of a contracted service.
Correct. For
Or
point of clarification.
Could it be questions for any of the three proposals from the
Yes.
city?
Yeah, and I think that's what you've already started to run into with,
Well, he's suggesting a broader,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
I
fine
just- I
too,
wanna-
because if somebody else comes forward,
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
all the townships want to get together, whatever. I think we all would look at that.
Mhm.
and as we said at the previous meeting, let's get all the options on the table to discuss it. Not just,
Yeah, so
sometimes
Russ,
it's easiest to see the forest through the trees.
yeah,
or
Russ, I
not.
wasn't sure that I necessarily meant that. And I'll tell you why, because what you're really talking about is essentially authority at one level. And that,
Might raise other questions.
oh my goodness, and from a timing standpoint, if we weren't pinned to a line in the sand date, and as I've mentioned to this committee on more than one occasion, the economy of scale in municipal operations is inevitable. It will take place. And so wouldn't it be nice if there was a countywide authority of some sort? Don't know how it would, don't know what it would look like, don't know how it would be operated, but boy, could you ever pool some money together and earmark it in areas where are worthwhile? But that's a huge discussion.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do that with the a city relative to the water issue. And that's been a year. So we have a time crunch.
Yeah.
So mine was more specific to not so really dealing with item number 3 on our list, was a contract or combined with other municipalities. And so for all practical purposes, right now, that's the city of Alpena.
But
And
if
so
anybody steps up.
establishing those questions that would be germane to a contract and what it would look like long-term. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Okay.
Yeah, any and all questions are good questions.
I would
Okay.
just like to add.
I just don't want to get into questions that are procedural questions. I don't feel that that's the, how many hours somebody's going to man something. It may be very important to others, and I'll happily take all of those questions and try to put them into a category. My brain may take me in a different place than somebody else's brain may take them. And so I just want to make sure that we come to you with 87
Well, and
questions.
I think every trustee sitting
Okay.
at this table
All right.
can probably create their own list and compile a master list, and let's just
Okay,
go for it. I mean.
all right.
Yes,
I
Laura.
would just like to add too, we have talked about doing a public forum, so I think this is part of that process of having these answers.
Well, and I think it's a very reasonable, well, given the consideration that depending on the potentials of our governor extending or changing the executive order that will lapse April 16th, depending on what she does in terms of social responsibility, that would be the determination of, housing, and it maybe have, especially as it continues to warm, even though there was a lightly cool breeze, not a freezing ripping wind as it was. Sorry.
I'm missing where you're
Bev
going.
Bev was busting my chops. She's like, everybody complains about it, but no, let's look at any avenue that we can to house, because now, once we compile this data, that's part of, I think, what the board has already stated. Let's get together and have a public forum to have input. Here are every option that we've collectively brought forward. Concerns, move forward, be done. Let's make a sound decision for our community. Okay, we voted on that. At this point in time, I will.
Yes,
Yes, we did.
yes, we did.
I know. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss attorney-client privilege, water litigation.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support? Support by trustee Reinhardt. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in, oh, roll call, sorry.
Clerk Plavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers,
Yes.
trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. We are now
127.
officially in closed session at 1:27.
I